you know, seeing other women and the whole thing. I mean, it was a big disappointment in my life.
What if the fairy tale marriage we thought we knew was built on lies? At 92, Shirley Jones finally dismantles decades of silence, affairs, heartbreak, whispers behind closed doors, and one truth so explosive it redefines her legacy. Stay. That hidden twist in her story will leave you breathless. It started like something out of a Hollywood script. Shirley Jones, the golden girl of stage and screen, fresh off her Oscar-winning role in Elmer Gantry, was the image of grace, innocence, and pure stardom. Jack Cassidy, on the other hand, was Broadway's shining light, handsome, witty, with a voice that could command a room in seconds. When these two worlds collided in the early 1960s, the press couldn't get enough. They were young, radiant, and looked like the perfect embodiment of glamour. To the outside world, their union was nothing short of magical. A leading lady married to a leading man. How could the story end any other way than happily ever after? But that's where appearances deceived. Because behind the perfect smiles and dazzling red carpet appearances was a marriage fueled by something much darker. Shirley once admitted she was swept up not just by Jack's talent, but by his overwhelming charm. The kind of energy that drew people in and made them forget themselves. He had a way of convincing anyone in his orbit that he was the center of the universe. For Shirley, who had grown up in a small town in Pennsylvania before being discovered by Rodgers and Hammerstein, Jack represented danger, excitement, and the thrill of living in Hollywood's fast lane. In those early years, everything felt intoxicating. They threw glamorous parties attended by the likes of Judy Garland, Frank Sinatra, and a rotating door of Hollywood's finest. Jack relished the spotlight, always cracking jokes, always stealing the show. Shirley played the doting wife, admiring her husband's confidence and the way he could make anyone feel like his best friend. Together, they were an unstoppable force, a match made in heaven, at least on the outside. But while the cameras loved them, their private life told a different story. Jack's need for attention wasn't confined to the stage. Even during the first years of marriage, Shirley noticed unsettling patterns, flirtations that went too far, glances that lingered too long, and rumors whispered just quietly enough that she could pretend not to hear them. She tried to ignore it, convincing herself that all men in Hollywood had wandering eyes. After all, she had been raised with traditional values. Divorce wasn't in her vocabulary, and her instinct was to endure. Yet, behind the shimmering facade, cracks began to widen. The very qualities that made Jack so magnetic, his energy, his boldness, his confidence, were also the seeds of destruction. He wasn't just chasing success. He was chasing validation everywhere he could find it. And for Shirley, the dream of a storybook romance began to feel like a carefully painted backdrop, ready to collapse at any moment. The fairy tale had begun, but the storm clouds were already forming overhead. And soon, Shirley would discover that Jack's restless nature wasn't just a quirk of personality. It was a secret that would consume their marriage in ways she never could have imagined. Because what she found out next made her realize she wasn't the only one Jack was giving his affection to, and not just with women. From the very beginning, Jack Cassidy had a presence that was impossible to ignore. He wasn't just handsome, he was electric. People described him as the life of every room, the man who could turn a dull gathering into an unforgettable night with just a story, a laugh, or a song. Women swooned over him, men admired him. He had that rare combination of charisma and confidence that made him almost untouchable. And Shirley, with her small-town upbringing and her natural warmth, fell deeply under his spell. But what Shirley would come to learn was that Jack's magnetic pull came with a dangerous cost. For him, attention wasn't optional. It was a drug. And like any drug, the more he had, the more he craved. His flirtations quickly turned into full-blown affairs. And while Hollywood was no stranger to infidelity, Jack's behavior went beyond the usual whispers. He didn't just step outside the marriage occasionally, he lived a double life that Shirley could barely keep up with. At first, the affairs were with women, fellow actresses, party guests, even fans who slipped past his boundaries. Shirley admitted in later years that she turned a blind eye to many of these betrayals, convincing herself it was just part of the Hollywood lifestyle. she loved him too much to walk away, and Jack always had a way of reeling her back in with apologies, charm, and promises he rarely kept. But soon, rumors began to swirl that Jack's indiscretions weren't confined to women at all. Friends of the couple recalled hearing shocking stories. Encounters Jack had with men in the theater world, secret liaisons hidden in plain sight. In a time when Hollywood would bury any hint of same-sex affairs, these rumors were explosive. Shirley herself later confirmed what many had whispered. Jack Cassidy was openly bisexual, at least within the privacy of their marriage. To the public, it was unthinkable, but behind closed doors, Shirley was forced to confront the reality of who her husband really was. The revelation left her torn. On one hand, she adored him, respected his talent, and wanted to keep their family together. On the other, she was living with a man whose desires pulled him in directions she couldn't compete with. Shirley once admitted that Jack told her, point blank, that he wanted to experience everything in life, every passion, every relationship, every sensation. He was a man who refused to be tied down, even by love. For Shirley, this truth was devastating. She had married a man who, no matter how much he loved her, would never belong to her alone. And the weight of that knowledge gnawed at her constantly. Every party, every trip, every new show he starred in carried the same question: who would Jack find next? But what truly shattered Shirley wasn't just the affairs themselves. It was how brazenly Jack lived his double life, almost daring her to call him out. And when she finally did, his shocking response revealed just how fragile their marriage truly was. On the surface, Shirley Jones seemed to have it all: a glittering Hollywood career, 3 beautiful sons, and a husband the world envied her for. She was America's sweetheart, a woman who radiated kindness and elegance. But behind closed doors, she was carrying a burden that grew heavier with each passing year. Jack's endless betrayals weren't just rumors anymore, they were her daily reality. And the emotional toll was staggering. Shirley later confessed that she spent much of her marriage to Jack pretending everything was fine. When the cameras flashed, she smiled. When the press asked, she praised her husband. She played her role perfectly. But inside, she was unraveling. She knew about his affairs with women. She knew about the whispers of his relationships with men. And she knew she couldn't stop him. The hardest part wasn't the cheating itself. It was the realization that Jack wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Friends recalled how Jack would openly flirt in front of Shirley, sometimes disappearing at parties, only to reappear hours later as if nothing had happened. And while most women might have exploded in anger, Shirley bit her tongue. She had grown up believing in loyalty, in marriage vows, in enduring the hard times, and she had children to think about. Leaving Jack would have meant shattering her family, and for years she chose instead to suffer in silence. But silence came at a price. Shirley began to lose herself. She once admitted that Jack's behavior made her feel less than, as though she was never enough to satisfy him no matter how hard she tried. And yet, she never stopped loving him. That's what made the pain even sharper. Her devotion clashed constantly with the reality of his betrayals. She was caught in a cruel cycle. Forgive, hurt, forgive again. At times, Shirley tried to confront him. She'd ask why he couldn't stay faithful, why their love wasn't enough. And Jack, with his trademark honesty, didn't sugarcoat it. He told her that fidelity simply wasn't in his nature. He wasn't built for monogamy. To Shirley, it felt like a dagger in the heart, but she accepted it because she didn't know how not to. He was the love of her life, even as he was breaking her apart piece by piece. Still, Shirley hid it well. She poured herself into her career, into raising her boys, into keeping the public image of a happy Hollywood couple alive. But those closest to her saw the cracks. Moments when she broke down in tears, moments when she admitted she didn't know how much longer she could endure it. And yet, the story doesn't end there. Because as Shirley tried to keep her suffering private, Hollywood itself began to take notice. The rumors were no longer whispers, they were headlines. And what the world began saying about Jack Cassidy's secret life would take the scandal to a level Shirley never imagined. Hollywood thrives on gossip, and by the late 1960s, Shirley and Jack were no longer just a glamorous couple. They were a source of constant speculation. Behind the dazzling parties and the magazine spreads, whispers spread like wildfire. Everyone in Hollywood circles knew Jack Cassidy had a wandering eye, but the details of his affairs became bolder, stranger, and harder for Shirley to dismiss as mere rumors. The tabloids began to pick up hints of trouble. There were blind items about a leading man with a golden voice, seen leaving nightclubs with men far younger than him. Industry insiders shared stories of Jack making advances during rehearsals, sometimes with women, other times with men. The secrecy around it all only added fuel to the fire. In a time when such scandals could ruin a career overnight, the gossip was explosive. Shirley later revealed that she was well aware of these whispers. Friends and acquaintances would discreetly ask her if the stories were true, forcing her to plaster on a smile and dismiss them with carefully chosen words. But inside, she was crushed. She knew they weren't lies. Jack himself wasn't shy about flaunting his conquests, even in front of her. His attitude was almost reckless. He seemed to believe he was untouchable, that his charm could shield him from any consequences. The situation escalated when partygoers began sharing more explicit tales. Jack, after a few drinks, would brag about his encounters, sometimes in earshot of Shirley herself. Some claimed he even relished the shock value, as though he wanted people to know he wasn't bound by convention. For Shirley, every whispered story was a fresh wound. She wasn't just a wife dealing with infidelity. She was a public figure trying to hold her dignity together while Hollywood watched and judged. The irony was cruel. Shirley was cast as America's sweetheart, the wholesome mother figure audiences adored. Yet in her own home, she was living with chaos she couldn't control. And Hollywood fed on it. Each rumor seemed more outrageous than the last. And soon, it wasn't just about Jack's affairs. It was about what kind of woman Shirley must be to put up with it. The speculation shifted from Jack's behavior to Shirley's silence, painting her as either heartbreakingly loyal or shockingly naive. Still, Shirley endured. She stayed quiet, burying her pain beneath a polished exterior. But by this point, the pressure was unbearable. The rumors weren't going away. They were intensifying. And the truth was, Shirley was holding on to a marriage that everyone else could see was crumbling. Yet as damaging as the gossip was, the real shock came decades later, when Shirley finally decided to speak for herself. And what she revealed at 92 didn't just confirm the whispers, it went even further, exposing secrets that stunned even those who thought they knew the story. For decades, Shirley Jones carried the weight of her marriage to Jack Cassidy in silence. She let the world see the polished facade, the glowing wife, the proud mother, the accomplished actress. But time has a way of loosening the chains of secrecy. And at 92, with little left to lose, Shirley finally opened up. And what she said left jaws on the floor. In interviews and in her memoir, Shirley revealed the staggering truth about her life with Jack. She admitted openly that he was never faithful, not once. But it wasn't just the countless affairs with women that shocked people. It was the confirmation of what Hollywood had only whispered about. Jack Cassidy, her husband, had affairs with men too. Something Shirley said she accepted, but could never truly understand. In an era where such revelations were career-ending, Shirley had carried that secret for him, protecting his legacy even as it broke her heart. She described Jack as a man consumed by desire, someone who wanted to taste everything life had to offer, regardless of consequence. He told her bluntly that he would never be satisfied with just one person. And Shirley, desperate to keep her family together, endured it. She confessed that she was heartbroken, but also powerless, stuck between her love for him and the constant betrayals that left her drained. What made her revelations so striking wasn't just the infidelity. It was the raw honesty about how much it destroyed her. Shirley admitted that she felt humiliated, torn between her public image as a wholesome star and the private agony of knowing her husband's secret life. And yet, she still called Jack the love of her life. She spoke of him with both pain and tenderness, acknowledging his flaws while never denying the passion that bound them together. One of the most shocking confessions Shirley made was that Jack's behavior wasn't hidden from her. He flaunted it. He wanted her to know, almost daring her to walk away, testing her limits again and again. And still, she stayed. For years, People wondered why she didn't leave sooner, why she tolerated such pain. At 92, Shirley finally gave the answer. Because she loved him, because she believed in marriage, and because she couldn't imagine a life without him. Her voice carried both strength and sorrow as she revealed the truth. It wasn't bitterness that drove her confessions. It was liberation. After decades of silence, she was finally free to say what really happened, free to let the world see the woman behind the smile. But with her truth came a shockwave. Fans were stunned, critics reevaluated Jack's legacy, and even Hollywood veterans whispered about what else might have been hidden. Shirley's confessions weren't just a personal revelation. They cracked open an entirely new way of viewing one of Hollywood's most glamorous couples. And yet, the fallout from her truth-telling didn't end there. Because once the silence was broken, the question became, how would Hollywood react now that the carefully crafted image of Jack Cassidy had been shattered? When Shirley's revelations finally spilled into the open, Hollywood didn't know how to react. For years, Jack Cassidy had been remembered as a charismatic Broadway star, a television regular, and the larger-than-life father of teen idol David Cassidy. His public image was that of the charming leading man who could light up any stage. But with Shirley's words, that carefully preserved memory fractured. Suddenly, the industry was forced to reconsider who Jack really was behind the curtain. Fans were stunned. Some longtime admirers felt betrayed, struggling to reconcile the polished performer with the reckless, self-destructive man Shirley described. Others weren't surprised at all. Rumors of Jack's wild behavior had always lingered, but now they were confirmed by the one person who knew him best. And the detail that unsettled people most wasn't just the endless infidelity, it was the brazenness of it. Jack hadn't simply cheated, he lived without boundaries, flaunting his double life, even in a time when such behavior could have ended careers overnight. For Shirley, the fallout was bittersweet. On one hand, she had finally unburdened herself of secrets she'd carried for decades. On the other, she was rewatching her husband's reputation unravel, piece by piece. Jack's affairs with both women and men became the headline. Hollywood retrospectives began re-examining his career, often through the lens of Shirley's confessions, rather than his talent. Even his tragic death in a fire at age 49 took on a darker, almost symbolic meaning. Another reckless end to a reckless life. Yet Shirley never portrayed him as a villain. In every interview, she made it clear, Jack was the love of her life. She adored him, even as he broke her heart again and again. That contradiction left people fascinated. How could she love a man so deeply while enduring such devastation? It was a question that divided Hollywood. Some praised her loyalty, calling her strength admirable. Others criticized her silence, suggesting she sacrificed too much of herself to preserve a marriage that was doomed from the start. The Cassidy children, too, felt the impact. David Cassidy had long spoken of his father's erratic behavior and narcissism, but Shirley's late-in-life honesty gave his words new weight. Fans revisited David's struggles with addiction and fame, wondering how much of it stemmed from the chaos Jack had sown in the family. The Cassidy name, once synonymous with wholesome charm thanks to the Partridge Family, was suddenly entangled in scandal and heartbreak. Still, Shirley's decision to speak didn't diminish her legacy, it enhanced it. At 92, she wasn't just a celebrated actress. She became a truth-teller, a woman unafraid to peel back the glamorous Hollywood facade and show the cost of loving someone like Jack Cassidy. Her revelations made her more relatable, more human, and more respected. She had carried the weight of silence for decades. And finally, she was free. But even as Hollywood reevaluated Jack's legacy and Shirley's resilience, one haunting question lingered. Had she told us everything? Or was there still a darker truth that Shirley kept tucked away, too painful or too explosive to ever fully reveal? Even after Shirley Jones's revelations, it felt like she hadn't told us everything. At 92, she confirmed the infidelities, the affairs with women and men, and Jack Cassidy's reckless hunger for attention. But the pauses in her voice hinted at memories too raw to share. Friends believed she only revealed what the public could bear. Rumors in Hollywood spoke of darker behavior, cruelty, breakdowns, reckless encounters, but Shirley stopped short, perhaps out of love, or to protect his legacy as the father of her children. What she did reveal was haunting enough. Jack thrived on chaos, addicted to pushing boundaries, leaving her humiliated yet devoted. Shirley admitted she would never stop loving him, even as he broke her. That paradox made her story unforgettable. And still, the question lingers. If this is what she confessed, what secrets did Shirley Jones carry to the grave, never to be known?